The phone rang at 3:47 in the morning. Sarah Chen jolted awake, her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird desperate for freedom. In the darkness of her bedroom, the smartphone on her nightstand glowed with an incoming call, casting eerie shadows across the ceiling she had stared at sleeplessly for countless nights. She reached for it with trembling fingers, squinting at the screen through sleep-clouded eyes that had finally, mercifully, allowed her a few hours of rest. The number displayed made her blood turn to ice. It was Emma's number, her daughter's number. It's the same number that had been disconnected 8 months ago. The same number that belonged to a phone buried 6 feet underground in Riverside Cemetery, clutched in the cold hands of a 17-year-old girl who would never answer another call again. Sarah's bedroom felt suddenly colder, as if the temperature had dropped 10 degrees in an instant. The digital clock on her nightstand blinked 3:47 in harsh red numbers. Outside her window, Westbridge slept under a moonless sky, the streetlights casting weak orange pools on empty sidewalks. Nothing moved, nothing breathed. The world felt suspended in that peculiar stillness that exists only in the hours between midnight and dawn. Her hand hovered over the phone, paralyzed by an impossible choice: answer or ignore. Face whatever this was, or pretend it never happened. Let it ring until it stopped. Until whoever, or whatever, was on the other end, gave up and left her alone in her grief. But Sarah had never been good at leaving questions unanswered. It was a trait she had passed on to Emma, that relentless curiosity that demanded explanations, that refused to accept surface-level answers. Emma had always pushed deeper, asked harder questions, dug for truth beneath comfortable lies. And maybe that's what had killed her. Sarah's thumb hovered over the screen. Logic screamed at her not to answer. This had to be a mistake, a cruel prank. Some technological glitch in the cellular network that was resurrecting dead phone numbers like digital ghosts. Dead people don't make phone calls. Dead daughters don't reach out from beyond the grave. The laws of nature, of physics, of reality itself forbade it. But what if? That terrible, impossible, what if that had haunted her every waking moment since the funeral? What if the police had been wrong? What if the medical examiner had made a mistake? What if Emma wasn't really in that cemetery but somewhere else, somewhere alive, trying desperately to reach her mother? Sarah knew she was being irrational. She had identified Emma's body herself at the morgue. She had seen her daughter's face, pale and still, looking like she was sleeping, except for the terrible absence of breath. She had touched Emma's cold hand and felt the absolute finality of death. She had watched them lower the casket into the ground and throw dirt on top until her baby girl disappeared beneath 6 feet of earth. Emma was dead. The rational part of Sarah's mind knew this with absolute certainty. But grief makes us irrational. Grief makes us believe in impossible things. Grief makes us answer phone calls from disconnected numbers at 3:47 in the morning. She pressed the green button and lifted the phone to her ear, her hand shaking so badly the phone rattled against her cheekbone. "Hello?" Her voice came out strangled, barely more than a whisper. Silence greeted her at first. Not the empty silence of a disconnected line, but the breathing silence of someone on the other end. Someone listening. Someone waiting. Sarah could hear it. That faint whisper of respiration. The subtle shift of background noise that meant a living person held a phone to their ears somewhere in the darkness. Her heart was beating so hard now she thought it might crack her ribs. A rushing sound filled her ears, her own blood pounding through her veins in rhythm with her terror and hope. "Emma?" She tried again, louder this time. "Emma, baby, is that you?" More silence. Then, cutting through the static like a knife through silk, a voice, a familiar voice. A voice she heard every night in her dreams and every morning in her nightmares. A voice she had thought she would never hear again. Except in memories and old voicemails she couldn't bring herself to delete. "Mom." One word. Just one word. But it was enough to shatter Sarah's world into 1,000 pieces. She dropped the phone, clattered onto the hardwood floor, the sound explosive in the quiet house. She scrambled to pick it up, her hands shaking so violently she could barely maintain her grip. The phone slipped through her fingers twice before she finally secured it and brought it back to her ear. "Emma, Emma, baby, is that you? Talk to me, please. Where are you? What happened? Are you okay?" But the line had gone dead. The call had ended. Sarah stared at the phone in disbelief, watching as the screen faded to black. Immediately tried to call back, her fingers stabbing at the number with desperate urgency. The call wouldn't go through. Instead, an automated voice informed her that the number she was trying to reach was not in service. She tried again. Same result. She tried 15 more times in the next 5 minutes. Each attempt met with the same cold, mechanical rejection. Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, still clutching the phone, her mind racing through possibilities. Would it really been Emma's voice? Could she trust her own ears? Grief did strange things to perception. Maybe she had heard what she desperately wanted to hear, her brain manufacturing familiar sounds from random static, but the call had been real. She checked her call history to confirm. There it was. Emma's number. Call received at 3:47 a.m. Duration. 42 seconds. It had happened. Someone had called her from her dead daughter's phone number. Someone who had spoken a single word in a voice that sounded exactly like Emma. Sarah stood up and walked to her window. Looking out at the sleeping suburb, Westbridge, Connecticut, population 42,000. The kind of town where everyone knew everyone, where the biggest news was usually the high school football scores or debates over the new shopping center. A safe town, good town. It's the kind of place where you raised your children and never worried about the terrible things that happened in bigger cities, except terrible things happened everywhere. Sarah knew that now. She had learned it the hardest way possible. Her reflection stared back at her from the darkened window glass, a woman of 43 who looked 10 years older. Her Asian features drawn and tired, dark circles permanently etched beneath her eyes. She had been pretty once. Her ex-husband James used to tell her she was beautiful, but that felt like a different life, a different person. The woman in the window was a ghost of who Sarah Chen used to be. She turned away from her reflection and walked through her house, turning on lights as she went, driving away the darkness. The house felt too big now, too empty. It had been perfect when they were a family of 3. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a spacious kitchen where Emma used to do her homework at the island while Sarah cooked dinner. Now it was just Sarah, alone with her memories and her grief, rattling around in rooms that echoed with absence. She made her way to Emma's bedroom. She hadn't been able to bring herself to change anything. Emma's bed was still made with the purple comforter she had picked out when she was 14. Her desk still held stacks of books and notebooks from last semester. Posters of her favorite bands still covered the walls. Debate team trophies lined the shelf above her dresser. Everything frozen in time, a shrine to a life cut short. Sarah sat on Emma's bed and picked up the pillow, holding it to her face. That subtle scent of Emma's shampoo and perfume had faded months ago, replaced by the neutral smell of fabric and dust. Sarah had tried to preserve it, had refused to wash the pillowcase, but time had taken even that small comfort from her. She set the pillow down and looked around the room with new eyes. If Emma had really called her, if her daughter was somehow alive, there might be clues here, evidence Sarah had missed. Something that would explain the impossible. But what could possibly explain a phone call from the grave? Sarah spent the next 2 hours searching Emma's room methodically, though she wasn't sure what she was looking for. She went through drawers, checked under the bed, looked in the closet. She found the normal detritus of a teenage girl's life. Clothes and makeup and journals and photographs, nothing that explained anything. When dawn finally crept through the curtains, painting the bedroom in shades of gray and gold, Sarah admitted defeat. There were no answers here, just memories and the hollow ache of loss. She went downstairs and made coffee, a ritual so automatic she barely registered the actions. Grind beans, add water, press start. Wait for the machine to gurgle and hiss and produce the dark liquid that would help her face another day. She stood at the kitchen counter watching the coffee drip slowly into the pot and wondered if she was losing her mind. The rational explanation was obvious. Someone was playing a cruel prank. Phone numbers could be spoofed easily. Any teenager with basic tech skills could make it appear that a call was coming from a disconnected number. And voice synthesis technology had advanced to the point where you could recreate anyone's voice with just a few samples. Emma had been on social media. She had posted videos, left voicemails, recorded herself for school projects. There was plenty of source material out there for someone who wanted to fake her voice. But why would anyone do that? What possible reason could someone have for torturing a grieving mother this way? Sarah poured herself a cup of coffee and carried it to the living room. She settled onto the couch and opened her laptop, determined to find answers. She started by researching phone number spoofing, reading article after article about how easy it was to fake caller ID information. Then she looked into voice synthesis, learning about the disturbing ease with which artificial intelligence could now clone human voices. Everything she read confirmed that the phone call could have been faked. That should have brought her relief. It meant she wasn't crazy, that there was a logical explanation. But it didn't bring relief. Instead, it filled her with a new kind of dread. Because if someone had gone to the trouble of spoofing Emma's number and faking her voice, they had done it for a reason. They wanted something from Sarah. They were manipulating her, playing with her grief like a cat toying with a mouse. And that meant this wasn't over. Whoever had made that call would call again. Sarah was both terrified and eager for that next call, terrified of what it might mean, eager for any connection, however false, to her daughter's voice. She didn't have to wait long. Phone rang again at 11:37 that morning. Sarah was in the shower, trying to wash away the exhaustion and confusion of a sleepless night. She heard the phone buzzing from the bathroom counter and lunged for it, not caring that she was dripping water everywhere. Emma's number. Again. She answered without hesitation this time, any caution burned away by desperate need. Who is this? What do you want from me? A different voice this time. It's not Emma's voice. Male, deep, slightly distorted, as if speaking through some kind of filter or voice modulator. Mrs. Chen, I apologize for the unconventional method of contact, but I needed to get your attention. I needed you to understand that what you believe about your daughter's death is wrong. Sarah gripped the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. What are you talking about? Who are you? Someone who knows the truth. Emma didn't kill herself. She was murdered. If you continue looking into this, if you start asking questions, you'll be murdered too. This is your only warning. Accept the official story. Grieve for your daughter. Move on with your life. Forget Emma ever called you. No. Sarah's voice was firm despite her shaking hands. I'm not going to forget, and I'm not going to stop asking questions. If you know something about what happened to Emma, tell me. The voice on the other end laughed, a cold sound empty of humor. You don't understand what you're dealing with. The people responsible for Emma's death are powerful. They have connections, resources. They will not hesitate to eliminate anyone who threatens them. Then why are you calling me? If they're so powerful, why warn me at all? A pause, then more quietly. Because Emma was a good kid. She didn't deserve what happened to her. And maybe her mother doesn't deserve it either. Take the warning, Mrs. Chen. Walk away while you still can. The line went dead. Sarah stood in her bathroom, water pooling at her feet, staring at her phone. The call had lasted 93 seconds, according to her call log. 93 seconds that had confirmed her worst fears and her deepest suspicions. Emma had been murdered. She had known it. Deep in her bones, in her mother's intuition, she had known the official story was wrong. Suicide. They had told her Emma died by suicide, that her beautiful, vibrant, happy daughter had taken pills, gotten into her car, and driven herself into a lake. Sarah had never believed it, not for 1 second, without evidence, without proof. Her protests had been dismissed as the desperate denials of a mother in grief. The police had been sympathetic, but firm. The medical examiner's report was clear. The evidence was overwhelming. Case closed. But now someone had called her and admitted the truth. Sarah got dressed quickly, her mind already racing ahead to her next move. She needed help. She couldn't investigate this alone, but who could she trust? The police had already closed the case. They wouldn't reopen it based on anonymous phone calls. She thought about calling her ex-husband James, but dismissed the idea immediately. James had moved to California 6 months before Emma's death, had barely made it back for the funeral. He had grieved, certainly, but from a distance. He had his new life, his new wife, his new priorities. He would entrap everything to help Sarah chase what he would certainly view as conspiracy theories and false hope. Her friends meant well, but none of them would take this seriously. They would urge her to see a therapist, to take medication, to accept what had happened and find a way to heal. They wouldn't believe in murder conspiracies involving powerful people, no, Sarah realized. She was truly alone in this. Whatever happened next, she would have to handle it herself. She grabbed her purse and car keys and headed for the one place that might have answers: Westbridge High School. The school looked the same as it always had: a sprawling brick building surrounded by athletic fields and parking lots. Sarah had been here countless times for parent-teacher conferences, debate tournaments, school plays, all the normal functions of a mother with a child in public school. She knew these halls, had walked them beside Emma on school open houses, had watched her daughter grow from a nervous freshman to a confident senior within these walls. But Emma had never made it to graduation. She had died 2 months before she would have walked across that stage to receive her diploma. Sarah signed in at the main office, receiving a visitor's badge from a secretary who recognized her and offered sympathetic condolences. Then she made her way through the halls to the guidance office. She needed to talk to Emma's guidance counselor, Mr. Richard Chen. No relation, despite sharing the same last name. He had been the last adult at school Emma had trusted, the one helping her with college applications and scholarship essays. If anyone knew whether Emma had been in trouble, whether she'd been afraid of something or someone, it would be him. The guidance office was located at the far end of the main building, a suite of rooms where counselors met with students about everything from schedule changes to personal crises. Sarah found Mr. Chen in his office, a small room made smaller by overflowing bookshelves and a desk covered in paperwork. He looked up when she knocked on the open door, and his expression shifted immediately to one of concern and sympathy. "Mrs. Chen, I wasn't expecting you. Please, come in. Sit down." He was a man in his late 30s, Asian American like Sarah and Emma, always impeccably dressed in button-down shirts and slacks. He had a gentle manner that put students at ease, a way of listening that made them feel heard. Emma had spoken highly of him, had called him the only adult at school who actually understood what students were going through. Sarah sat in the chair across from his desk, the same chair Emma must have sat in during their meetings. "I'm sorry to drop in like this," she began, "but I need to ask you some questions about Emma, about the weeks before she died." Mr. Chen's expression grew troubled. "Mrs. Chen, I know how difficult this must be for you. Losing a child is the worst thing that can happen to a parent. But I'm not sure what I can tell you that I haven't already told the police." "The police didn't ask the right questions." Sarah leaned forward, her voice intense. "They decided it was suicide and stopped looking for any other explanation. But I need to know if Emma seemed scared or worried in those last weeks. If she mentioned being threatened or if anyone was bothering her." Mr. Chen shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Emma was under a lot of stress. Senior year is difficult for all students. College applications, deciding about the future, the pressure to succeed. It's not unusual for students to feel overwhelmed. That's not what I asked. Was she afraid? Did she tell you about any problems?" He hesitated, and Sarah saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, maybe, or fear, or both. "There was something," he said slowly. "About 3 weeks before her death, Emma came to me very upset. She said she had discovered something troubling. She wouldn't tell me exactly what it was, but she asked me if I knew how to contact investigative journalists. She wanted advice on how to expose corruption." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "What kind of corruption?" She didn't say. "I told her that if she had evidence of wrongdoing, she should go to the police or the FBI, not to the media. I advised her to be very careful about making accusations without solid proof. I told her that sometimes young people get caught up in conspiracy theories or misinterpret things they do and fully understand." "How did she react to that?" "She seemed disappointed, maybe even a little betrayed. She thanked me for my time and left. No, I didn't see her again after that. The next time I heard her name was when the principal called to inform the staff that Emma Chen had died." Sarah stared at him. "So my daughter came to you, told you she had discovered some kind of corruption, asked for help, and you told her she was probably misunderstanding things?" Mr. Chen flinched. "I was trying to protect her. High school students sometimes get ideas that they re-uncovering major scandals, when really it's just administrative inefficiency or poor communication. I didn't want her to damage her college prospects by making unfounded accusations against local officials. Did you tell any of this to the police?" "No." He looked down at his desk. "They ruled her death a suicide. I saw no point in mentioning a conversation that seemed irrelevant to their conclusion. Seemed irrelevant." Sarah's voice was cold now. "My daughter discovered corruption, tried to get help, was brushed off, and then died 3 weeks later. And you saw no connection worth mentioning. Mrs. Chen, I understand you're looking for answers. But Emma's death was a tragedy, not a conspiracy. Sometimes good kids make terrible choices in moments of crisis. The best thing you can do is accept what happened and find a way to honor her memory. Sarah stood up abruptly. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chen. You've been very helpful, even if not in the way you intended. She left his office before he could respond, her mind whirling with new information. Emma had tried to expose corruption. She had sought help and been dismissed. 3 weeks later, she was dead. That wasn't a coincidence, that was a pattern. Sarah's next stop was the school library. If Emma had been researching corruption, she might have used school computers. Might have left some trace of what she had been investigating. The librarian, Mrs. Patricia Walsh, had known Emma well. Emma had spent many lunch periods in the library, often working on research projects or practicing debate arguments. Mrs. Walsh greeted Sarah with a sad smile and immediate permission to check the computer logs. She pulled up the records of Emma's library computer usage for the last month before her death. The search history was revealing. Emma had been researching local government contracts, city council meetings, public financial records. She had accessed databases of public officials, financial disclosures. She had looked up information about shell companies and money laundering. What was she looking for? Mrs. Walsh asked softly, reading over Sarah's shoulder. The truth, Sarah replied, and she found it, and it got her killed. She took screenshots of Emma's search history on her phone, documenting everything. This was evidence. It's not enough to prove murder, maybe, but enough to establish that Emma had been investigating something serious in the weeks before her death. Sarah left the school and sat in her car in the parking lot, reviewing everything she had learned. Emma had discovered some kind of corruption involving local government. She had tried to get help from her guidance counselor and been dismissed. She had continued researching on her own, and then she had died. Someone had wanted to stop Emma's investigation. Someone with enough power to make her death look like suicide. Someone who could influence police investigations and medical examiner reports. Her phone rang. Emma's number. Sarah answered immediately. I'm not stopping. Whatever you thought this warning would accomplish, it won't work. I'm going to find out what Emma discovered. I'm going to expose whoever killed her. The same distorted male voice responded. Then you're signing your own death warrant. So be it. Sarah hung up and started her car. She had work to do. Over the next week, Sarah became an investigator. She took a leave of absence from her job as a hospital administrator, citing continued grief and the need for time to process her loss. Her supervisor was understanding, sympathetic, granting her open-ended leave with the promise that her position would be waiting when she was ready to return. But Sarah had no intention of returning, not until she had answers. She started by obtaining copies of Emma's complete school records through a public information request. The records included her grades, attendance, disciplinary history, and all documented interactions with school officials. Sarah went through everything with meticulous attention, looking for patterns or anomalies. What she found was remarkable. Emma had been an exceptional student, straight A's in all advanced placement courses, perfect attendance until her death, no disciplinary issues of any kind, glowing recommendations from teachers, active in debate club, volunteer work, student government. The picture that emerged was of a young woman who was thriving academically and socially. There was absolutely nothing in these records to suggest a student who was depressed or suicidal. No missed assignments, no calls home about behavioral concerns, no visits to the school psychologist, nothing. So where had the narrative of Emma as a troubled teen come from? Sarah pulled out the police report from Emma's death investigation. She had read it before, but now she read it with a critical eye, looking for inconsistencies or assumptions. The report stated that Emma had a history of depression and anxiety. It cited her journal as evidence of her deteriorating mental state. It mentioned that she had been prescribed medication for sleep issues. It quoted friends who said Emma had seemed stressed about college applications. But where was the actual evidence of depression? The report referenced a journal, but Sarah had that journal now. The police had returned all of Emma's belongings after closing the case. Sarah had been too grief-stricken to look at them at the time, had boxed everything up and stored it in the garage. Now she retrieved those boxes and went through them systematically. Emma's laptop, her phone, her backpack, her clothes from the day she died, and the journal. Sarah opened the journal with trembling hands. It was a simple black notebook, the kind sold at any bookstore. Emma's handwriting filled the pages. The familiar loops and curves that Sarah had watched develop from childhood scrawls to teenage script. She started reading from the beginning, from entries dated nearly a year before Emma's death. The early entries were normal teenage thoughts: excitement about making the debate team, frustration with a difficult physics class, observations about friends and boys, and the general drama of high school life. But then, about 4 months before Emma's death, the tone shifted. The entries became darker, more introspective. Emma wrote about feeling overwhelmed by expectations. It's about wondering if she was good enough, about fear of failure and inadequacy. These were the entries the police had referenced. The evidence of Emma's deteriorating mental state. Except something was wrong. Sarah had been reading Emma's writing for 17 years. She knew her daughter's voice, her rhythms, her vocabulary, and these dark entries didn't sound like Emma. The phrasing was off. The word choices were strange. It was like reading something written by an entirely different person. Sarah grabbed Emma's laptop and started searching. She pulled up old school essays, text messages, social media posts. She compared Emma's authentic writing to these journal entries. They were completely different. Emma had a distinctive writing style, witty and sharp and full of specific pop culture references. But the journal entries were generic, almost clinical in their descriptions of depression and anxiety. Sarah's hands started shaking as the realization hit her. These entries weren't written by Emma. Someone had forged them. Someone had created a false narrative of a depressed teenager, planted it in Emma's journal, and used it to support the suicide ruling. Who had access to Emma's journal? Who could have made these entries? Sarah thought back to the weeks before Emma's death. Emma had kept her journal with her most of the time, in her backpack or her room. But there was one place Emma always left her backpack unattended: Mr. Chen's office, during guidance counseling sessions. Sarah felt sick. The guidance counselor. The man Emma had trusted. The man who had dismissed her concerns about corruption. The man who had told the police nothing about Emma's investigation. He had access. He had opportunity. He had a motive, if he was somehow involved in the corruption Emma had discovered. Sarah grabbed her laptop and started researching Richard Chen. She found his public employment records. He had been at Westbridge High for 6 years, hired right after completing his master's degree in counseling. Before that, he had worked for the City Planning Department. The City Planning Department, the same department that would be involved in approving contracts and reviewing financial disclosures. Sarah dug deeper. She found Richard Chen's own financial records, which were public because he had briefly served on a city advisory committee. Nothing seemed unusual at first glance. Modest salary, reasonable expenses. But then she noticed something. Large deposits in his bank account, irregularly spaced, always just under $10,000. The amounts that would avoid triggering automatic reporting to federal authorities. Someone was paying Richard Chen, and they were being careful about it. Sarah's phone rang. She jumped, startled by the sudden sound. "Emma's number," she answered. "What do you want?" A new voice this time, young male, nervous. "My name is David Park. I was Emma's debate partner. I need to talk to you about what happened to her. Can we meet somewhere?" Sarah's breath caught. David Park. She remembered the name. Emma had mentioned him often, her partner in debate competitions. They had won regional championships together. "How do I know I can trust you?" Sarah asked cautiously. "Because I was there when it happened. I know what Emma was investigating. I know who killed her. And I have evidence." "Where are you? I'm scared to meet in public. They're watching me. They've been following me since Emma died. But I can't live with this anymore. I need to tell someone what I know." Sarah made a decision. "Come to my house, tonight at 8 o'clock. Park around the corner and walk to the back door. I'll let anyone see you arrive." "Okay, thank you for believing me, Mrs. Chen. Emma always said you would. She said if anything happened to her, you would be the one who wouldn't give up." "Mrs. Chen?" The line went dead. Sarah spent the rest of the afternoon preparing. If David Park was legitimate, if he really had evidence about Emma's murder, she needed to be ready to document everything. She set up her laptop to record video, checked that her phone was fully charged, made sure she had multiple ways to back up any information he provided. But she also prepared for the possibility that this was a trap. She left a sealed envelope with her neighbor, Mrs. Patricia Martinez, with instructions to open it if anything happened to Sarah. The envelope contained copies of everything she had discovered so far about Emma's investigation and suspicious death. At 7:30, Sarah turned off most of the lights in her house, leaving only a small lamp on in the kitchen. She waited in the darkness, watching out the back window for any sign of movement. At precisely 8 o'clock, a figure emerged from the shadows. Teenage boy, Asian, slight build, moving cautiously toward her back door. Sarah opened it before he could knock. "David Park?" she whispered. He nodded and slipped inside quickly. Sarah locked the door behind him and led him to the kitchen table. In the light, she could see he was terrified. His hands shook. His eyes darted constantly to the windows, as if expecting someone to burst through at any moment. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Tell me everything," Sarah said. David pulled a flash drive from his pocket and set it on the table. "Everything Emma found is on here. All her research, all her evidence. She gave it to me 3 days before she died. She told me if anything happened to her, I should give it to you or to a journalist. But I was too scared. I'm still scared. But I can't keep quiet anymore." What did Emma discover? It's a massive embezzlement scheme. City officials funneling millions of dollars through fake contracts to shell companies, money that should have gone to schools, and infrastructure disappearing into offshore accounts. Emma traced it all. She had names, bank records, email chains, everything. Sarah felt her heart racing. Who was involved? The list is on the flash drive, but the main person, the one orchestrating everything, is City Councilman Marcus Holloway. He's been stealing from Westbridge for 5 years. When Emma figured it out, he had her killed. How do you know he had her killed? Because Emma told me he threatened her. 2 weeks before she died, she went to confront him. She thought if she showed him the evidence, he would resign, maybe face justice. She believed in doing things the right way. But Holloway didn't confess. He didn't resign. Instead, he told Emma that if she went public with her accusations, she would regret it. He said accidents happen to teenage girls who don't know when to keep quiet. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. And then what happened? Emma was scared, but she wasn't deterred. She decided to take her evidence to a journalist instead. She contacted someone at the Capital City Tribune. But before she could meet with them, she died. Her car went into Mercy Lake. The police ruled it suicide. Case closed. But you don't believe it was suicide? David shook his head vehemently. I was with Emma the day before she died. We had debate practice. She was excited, not depressed. She told me she had a meeting scheduled with the journalist for the following week. She said she was going to expose everything Holloway had done. She said justice was finally coming. Does that sound like someone planning to kill herself? No. Sarah's voice was steel. Sounds like someone planning to live. Someone planning a future. Exactly. David's eyes filled with tears. Emma was my best friend. She was brilliant and brave and good. She didn't deserve what happened to her. Tell me about the night she died. Where were you? At home, but Emma called me around 9 p.m. She sounded strange. Her words were slurred, like she was drunk or drugged. She said someone had put something in her drink at dinner. She said she felt dizzy and needed to get home. I told her not to drive, to call 911, but she hung up. That was the last time I heard her voice. Sarah felt tears pricking her own eyes. Why didn't you tell the police this? I did. I called them after I heard about the accident. I told them Emma had called me, that she sounded drugged, that someone had poisoned her. But they said the toxicology report showed she had taken her mother's sleeping pills. They said the slurred speech was from the medication. They said I must have misunderstood what she was saying. They basically told me I was wrong and grief was making me imagine things, so they ignored you. Worse, a week after the funeral, someone came to my house, a man I'd never seen before. He told me that I needed to stop telling people that Emma was murdered. He said if I kept talking about conspiracies and poison, bad things might happen to my family. He said accidents happen all the time. Especially to teenagers who don't know when to keep their mouths shut. They threatened you, same way they threatened Emma. Yes. David wiped his eyes. I've been terrified ever since. I stopped answering questions about Emma. I stopped talking about my suspicions. I gave them what they wanted. Silence. But I've felt like a coward every day since. Emma died trying to expose the truth, and I just hid like a scared child. You're here now. That takes courage or desperation. David looked at the flash drive on the table. I've been having nightmares. Seeing Emma's face, hearing her voice telling me I betrayed her, I can't live like this anymore. So I'm giving you everything. Do whatever you think is right. Expose these people. Get justice for Emma. I don't care what happens to me anymore. Sarah picked up the flash drive, feeling its weight in her palm. This small piece of plastic and metal contained the truth about her daughter's death. It's the evidence that would prove Emma had been murdered. The information that would bring down the people responsible. Thank you, she said quietly. I promise you Emma's death will not be in vain. David stood up to leave. Be careful, Mrs. Chen. These people are dangerous. They've killed before, and they'll kill again if they feel threatened. Don't trust the local police. Marcus Holloway has connections everywhere in this town. I'll be careful. And David, you should leave town for a while. Go somewhere safe. If they find out you gave me this, you'll be in danger. I'm already in danger. We all are, just by knowing the truth. But at least now the truth has a chance of being heard. He slipped out the back door as quietly as he had arrived, disappearing into the shadows. Sarah watched until she was sure he was gone, then locked the door and drew all the curtains. She sat at her kitchen table and plugged the flash drive into her laptop. The drive contained dozens of folders, each meticulously labeled and organized. Emma had been thorough, systematic, building her case with the precision of a prosecutor preparing for trial. Sarah opened the first folder. It contained financial records for something called Meridian Solutions LLC, according to the documents. Westbridge had paid this company over $8 million in the past 5 years for various consulting services. But when Sarah looked closer, the details became suspicious. The contracts were vague, driving services like strategic planning and efficiency consulting without any specific deliverables. There were no reports, no documented work product, no evidence that Meridian Solutions had actually done anything to earn their payments. Emma had included notes in the folder, her analysis of the situation. She had discovered that Meridian Solutions was a shell company with no employees, no office, no website. Just a registered address that led to a mail forwarding service in Delaware. The next folder contained bank records. Emma had somehow obtained statements showing where the money paid to Meridian Solutions had gone after leaving the city accounts. The funds had been transferred through a series of shell companies, each registered in different states or countries, making the money difficult to trace. But Emma had traced it. Following the paper trail through multiple jurisdictions, she had ultimately tracked the money to personal accounts held by Marcus Holloway, Richard Chen, and 3 other Westbridge officials. They had been stealing from their own city, taking money that should have funded schools and roads and public services, and funneling it into their own pockets. Sarah continued through the folders, her anger building with each new piece of evidence. Email chains showed the conspirators discussing how to structure the contracts to avoid scrutiny. Recorded phone calls captured them joking about how easy it was to steal from taxpayers. Financial records showed them spending their ill-gotten gains on luxury cars, vacation homes, expensive watches, and in the final folder, Sarah found the smoking gun. A recorded conversation between Marcus Holloway and Richard Chen, dated 5 days before Emma's death. She clicked play and heard Holloway's voice, smooth and confident. The Chen girl is becoming a serious problem. She's connected the dots. She has documentation that could send us all to prison. Chen responded, his voice nervous. What do you suggest we do? We eliminate the problem. Permanently. Make it look like suicide. Depressed teenager, academic pressure. Everyone will believe it. I have people who can handle this quietly. Are you sure that's necessary? Maybe we could just scare her into silence. Holloway's laugh was cold. She went to a journalist. She's not going to be scared into silence. She has to be removed, and we need to do it soon, before she has a chance to go public. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then, I can get access to her mother's prescription sleeping pills. We can make it look like an overdose. Good, you handled drugging her. I'll arrange the accident. Her car into Mercy Lake. Everyone will assume she was impaired and lost control. It's tragic, but believable. The police won't look too closely. They never do in these small towns. Sarah stopped the recording. She couldn't listen anymore. These men had calmly, casually planned her daughter's murder like they were discussing a business transaction. Emma had been nothing to them but an obstacle to be removed. She copied all the files from the flash drive onto her laptop, then backed them up to cloud storage, a second flash drive, and emailed them to an account she had created for this purpose. She wasn't going to risk losing this evidence. Then she sat back and tried to think logically about her next move. She had proof that Emma had been murdered. She had recordings, financial documents, a clear motive, and conspiracy. But who could she trust with this information? The local police were out. Holloway had connections throughout Westbridge. He might have officers on his payroll, or at minimum, the police might be reluctant to move against a sitting city councilman without ironclad evidence. The FBI was an option. Public corruption was within their jurisdiction. But getting their attention, making them take this seriously, could take time. And in that time, Holloway and his accomplices might realize their conspiracy had been exposed. They might destroy evidence or flee. A journalist was probably the best option, someone from outside Westbridge, someone with a reputation for exposing corruption, someone who wouldn't be intimidated by local politics. Sarah started researching investigative journalists who specialized in government corruption. She found several possibilities, but one name kept appearing: Jennifer Marks, senior investigative reporter for the Capital City Tribune. She had won numerous awards for exposing corruption in local governments across the state. Her articles had led to indictments, resignations, reforms. If anyone could tell this story, it was Jennifer Marks. Sarah drafted an email carefully summarizing Emma's investigation and explaining what she had discovered. She attached selected files from Emma's evidence, enough to prove the seriousness of the case without overwhelming the initial contact. She hit send at 2:30 in the morning, then sat staring at her laptop screen, wondering how long it would take to get a response. Journalists probably received hundreds of emails a day. This might get lost in the noise, or dismissed as a conspiracy theory from a grieving mother. But 3 hours later, her phone rang. "Unknown number," Sarah answered cautiously. "Hello, Mrs. Chen. This is Jennifer Marks from the Capital City Tribune. I received your email. I've reviewed the files you sent. I'd like to meet with you as soon as possible." This story is explosive. Relief flooded through Sarah. "You believe me? The evidence speaks for itself. Your daughter did remarkable investigative work, professional quality. I've been covering government corruption for 20 years, and I've rarely seen documentation this thorough from anyone, let alone a high school student. She was exceptional. I have no doubt." Jennifer's voice softened with sympathy. "I'm very sorry for your loss. And I'm sorry the authorities failed to see what really happened, but we're going to change that. Can you meet me today? I'm in Westbridge now, actually. I drove straight here after reading your email. I'm at the Riverside Hotel." Sarah felt a spike of alarm. "You're here? In Westbridge? That's not safe. These people are watching. They've killed before, which is exactly why speed is essential. They don't know yet that their conspiracy has been exposed. We have a brief window to publish this story before they can react. Once it's public, once the FBI is involved, they can't hurt anyone else. But we need to move fast." Sarah made a decision. "I'll meet you. Give me 2 hours. I need to make copies of everything and leave them with someone I trust, in case anything happens to me." Smart thinking. "I'll text you the room number. Come to the back entrance of the hotel. Don't let anyone see you arrive." 2 hours later, Sarah sat across from Jennifer Marks in a hotel room that had been converted into a makeshift investigation center.
Documents covered every surface.
Jennifer had already printed out hundreds of pages from Emma's files and organized them into categories. Jennifer was in her late 40s, with short gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She had the focused intensity of someone who had spent decades hunting stories that others wanted buried. "Your daughter was brilliant," Jennifer said, gesturing at the documents. "Look at this organizational structure. Every claim is backed by multiple sources. Every connection is documented. This is better work than I see from professional investigators." Sarah felt a bittersweet pride. She always wanted to be a journalist. She was planning to major in investigative journalism in college. She would have been exceptional at it. Jennifer pulled out a legal pad covered in notes. "I've already started verifying her findings. I called my source at the state controller's office. The payments to Meridian Solutions are real. Contracts are real. The vagueness of the terms is real. Everything checks out so far. How long until you can publish?" I need to finish verification and reach out to the accused parties for comment. Standard journalistic practice. I should be able to run the story in 72 hours, 3 days. Sarah tried to calculate if they could maintain secrecy that long.
Oh.
These people have murdered to keep this quiet. Won't contacting them for comment tip them off? It will. But here's the thing. I'm not going to give them time to destroy evidence. The moment I send the requests for comment, I'm also notifying federal authorities. I have contacts at the FBI who specialize in public corruption. They'll move immediately to secure documents and freeze accounts. And in those 3 days before publication, what if Holloway decides to run or to come after me? That's why you're not going back to Westbridge. Jennifer's voice was firm. You're staying here in this hotel under a fake name? I've dealt with dangerous people before. I know how to keep sources safe. You don't leave this room except with me. You don't contact anyone in Westbridge. You essentially disappear until this story breaks. What about David Park, the boy who gave me the evidence? He's in danger too. Give me his contact information. I'll arrange protection for him as well. The Tribune has resources for situations like this. Sarah provided David's information, then settled in for what Jennifer called the verification marathon. They went through Emma's files line by line, Jennifer calling sources, checking public records, confirming every detail that could be confirmed. It was tedious, exhausting work, but it was also necessary. A story this big, with accusations this serious, had to be airtight. One error, one unverified claim, and the whole thing could be dismissed as a conspiracy theory. As they worked, Sarah learned more about Jennifer's career. She had exposed corruption in a dozen municipalities, had seen her reporting lead to arrests and convictions. She had also faced retaliation. Lawsuits, threats, an arson attack on her car. She understood the risks intimately. Why do you do it? Sarah asked during a break. Why keep investigating these dangerous people? Because someone has to. Jennifer looked up from the documents she was reviewing. Because if journalists don't hold the powerful accountable, who will? The system only works when there are people willing to shine light into dark corners, even when it's dangerous. Emma felt the same way. She could have ignored what she found, could have focused on her college applications and debate tournaments and just been a normal teenager. But she chose to pursue the truth. Then we honor her choice by finishing what she started. Jennifer's eyes were fierce. These people killed your daughter because they thought they could get away with it. We're going to prove them wrong. Over the next 3 days, Sarah existed in a strange limbo. She stayed in the hotel room, leaving only 4 brief walks with Jennifer or to grab food from the restaurant downstairs. She couldn't contact anyone, couldn't check on her house, couldn't live her normal life. But she didn't mind. For the first time since Emma's death, she had purpose. She was doing something meaningful. She was getting justice for her daughter. Jennifer worked nonstop, barely sleeping, verifying facts and writing the story. She brought in a forensic accountant to analyze the financial records. She contacted Emma's journalism teacher at Westbridge High to confirm Emma's research skills and interest in investigative reporting. She tracked down the mail forwarding service used by Meridian Solutions and got confirmation that the company had no real operations. Every detail of Emma's investigation was confirmed and expanded. Jennifer found additional evidence Emma hadn't uncovered, including 2 other shell companies Holloway had used for his scheme. On the 3rd day, Jennifer composed her requests for comment. Professional, neutral emails to Marcus Holloway, Richard Chen, and the 3 other officials named in Emma's investigation. The emails laid out the allegations clearly: embezzlement, conspiracy, fraud, murder. They invited the accused to respond, to provide their side of the story. To explain the documented financial transfers and recorded conversations, Jennifer sent the emails at 9 a.m. on a Thursday morning. Then she immediately called her FBI contact and provided a summary of the evidence. The response was swift. By noon, federal agents were in Westbridge, executing search warrants on Holloway's office and home. By 2 p.m., Richard Chen was in custody, arrested at the high school while trying to flee. By 4 p.m., Marcus Holloway had been located at his lawyer's office and was being questioned. The story broke online at 6 p.m., posted to the Tribune's website with the headline, "Westbridge Councilman accused of embezzlement and murder in scheme exposed by teenage victim." Jennifer had written a powerful piece, weaving together Emma's investigation, her murder, and the massive corruption scheme. She included excerpts from the recorded conversations, details from the financial records, and a moving tribute to Emma's courage and investigative skills. The story went viral within hours. Major news networks picked it up. Social media exploded with outrage. By the next morning, it was front-page news across the state. Sarah watched it all from her hotel room, reading comments and reactions, seeing Emma's name trending on social media. People were calling her a hero, a brilliant young investigator, a martyr for truth and justice. But to Sarah, she was just Emma, just her baby girl who should have been starting college in the fall instead of being eulogized in news articles. The arrests happened quickly. Marcus Holloway was charged with embezzlement, conspiracy, and first-degree murder. Richard Chen faced the same charges, plus evidence tampering for forging Emma's journal entries. The three other officials were arrested for their roles in the embezzlement scheme. The trial began 14 months after Emma's death, after a lengthy investigation that confirmed every element of the case Emma had built. The prosecutors had expanded on her work, finding even more evidence of corruption and conspiracy. Sarah attended every day of the trial, sitting in the front row of the courtroom, making sure that Holloway and Chen had to look at her, had to see the face of the woman whose daughter they had murdered. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. It presented Emma's files, showed the jury the financial records and email chains and recorded conversations. They brought in expert witnesses who explained how the embezzlement scheme worked, how the shell companies were structured, how the money was laundered. They called David Park to testify. He stood in the witness box, visibly terrified but determined, and told the jury about Emma's investigation and the threats she had received. He described the phone call he had received from Emma the night she died, how she had sounded drugged and scared. The defense tried to argue that the financial irregularities were honest mistakes, that the recorded conversations were taken out of context, that Emma's death was still suicide, regardless of any embezzlement, but the evidence was too strong. The jury saw through the lies and obfuscation. After 6 hours of deliberation, they returned with their verdict, guilty on all counts. Marcus Holloway showed no emotion as the verdict was read. Richard Chen broke down crying, begging for mercy. The other defendants sat in stunned silence. The judge showed no mercy. Maximum sentences for all of them. Life in prison without the possibility of parole for Holloway and Chen, decades behind bars for their accomplices. Sarah sat in the courtroom and listened to the sentences, feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. Justice had been done. Emma's killers would spend the rest of their lives in prison. The truth had been exposed. But Emma was still dead. The verdict didn't change that. It didn't bring her daughter back. After the trial ended, Sarah finally felt able to return to Westbridge. She had been living in Capital City throughout the investigation and trial, unable to face the town that had harbored her daughter's killers. But now, she needed to visit one place, Riverside Cemetery. She walked slowly to Emma's grave on a cool autumn afternoon. The leaves were turning gold and red, falling from the trees in a gentle cascade. It was the kind of day Emma had always loved, perfect weather for sitting outside and reading. The headstone was simple granite, engraved with Emma's name and dates. Sarah had chosen an inscription, Truth Seeker, Justice Fighter, Beloved Daughter, because that's who Emma had been. Not a victim, not a statistic, but a warrior who had fought for what was right, even knowing the danger. Sarah knelt beside the grave and placed flowers on the headstone. White roses, Emma's favorite. "I did it, baby," she whispered. "I finished what you started. They're all in prison. Everyone who hurt you. Everyone who thought they could get away with it. Your investigation brought down a corrupt system. You made a difference." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying a few leaves across the grave. Sarah liked to think it was Emma's way of responding, of letting her know she had heard. Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket. A text message from an unknown number. She almost deleted it without reading. She had learned to ignore messages from numbers she didn't recognize during the investigation. Too many reporters, too many curiosity seekers, too many people wanting to profit from tragedy. But something made her open this one. The message was simple. Just 3 words. "Thank you, Mom." Sarah's breath caught. Her hands began to tremble. She stared at the message, reading it over and over, her mind refusing to process what it might mean. It couldn't be. It was impossible. She dialed the number with shaking fingers. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. No greeting, just silence. Then a voice, a whisper through the phone, familiar and impossible and real. "Mom, it's me. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I had to let you think I was dead." Oh, but they were watching you. If they knew I survived, they would have come after you. I had to stay hidden until it was safe. Until they were all in prison? I'm sorry. Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The world was spinning, reality fracturing around her. "Where are you?" she managed to whisper. "Far away from Westbridge. I can't come back yet. It's maybe not for a long time. But I needed you to know. I needed you to know I'm alive. That I love you. That everything you did, every risk you took, it mattered. You saved me, Mom. Emma, please. I need to see you soon. When it's completely safe, I promise. But for now, just know I'm okay. Safe." The line went dead. Sarah sat in the cemetery, clutching her phone, her mind unable to process what had just happened. Was it real? Was her daughter truly alive? Or was this grief's cruelest trick, a hallucination born from desperate hope? She looked down at the grave beneath her, at the headstone with Emma's name. Who was buried here? Sarah's hands shook as she called the one person who might give her a straight answer. David Park answered on the first ring, as if he had been expecting this call. "Mrs. Chen." "David, tell me the truth. Is my daughter alive?" A long pause stretched across the line. Sarah could hear him breathing, could sense his internal struggle about whether to confirm the impossible. Finally, quietly, yes. Sarah's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the grass beside the grave, her whole body racked with sobs. Relief, rage, joy, confusion. 17 months of grief collapsing in on itself as reality rewrote itself around her. David continued speaking, his voice gentle but urgent. "Emma wanted to tell you from the beginning, but we knew they were watching you, monitoring your phone calls, tracking your movements. If you showed any sign that you thought she might be alive, they would have known something was wrong. They would have looked harder. They might have found her. So you let me grieve, let me believe my daughter was dead. It was the only way to keep both of you safe." David's voice cracked with emotion. "Do you think this was easy? Watching you suffer? Knowing what we knew? But if they had suspected Emma survived, they would have killed you to draw her out. And they would have killed me for helping her disappear. The only way any of us lived was if the world believed Emma Chen died in that lake." Sarah tried to breathe normally, tried to think through the implications. How? How did you fake her death? "My uncle works at the county morgue, has for 20 years. It's the one who handles unidentified bodies, processes Jane does. There was a girl, maybe a year older than Emma, found dead in a homeless shelter. Overdose. No ID, no family looking for her. My uncle kept the body on ice for 3 weeks while we planned everything, used a dead girl's body to fake Emma's death. We gave that girl a burial she wouldn't have had otherwise. Funeral, headstone, dignity. Her death saved Emma's life, Mrs. Chen. I know how that sounds. I know how terrible it is. But it was the only option we had, and the identification. The police confirmed it was Emma through dental records. Richard Chen had access to Emma's medical files through the school. He switched the dental records before the police investigation began. He thought he was helping cover up the murder. What he actually did was help us fake Emma's death. Sarah's mind raced through the timeline, reconstructing everything she thought she knew. The night Emma died, the phone call to David, the drugged voice saying someone had poisoned her. The night of the accident, Sarah said slowly. "Emma really was drugged, wasn't she?" "Yes." "They put something in her food at dinner. She realized what was happening and called me. I drove to her location and got her out of the car before it went into the lake. My uncle had already delivered the Jane Doe's body to the scene. We made it look like Emma had been driving. Placed her phone in the car, her wallet, her jacket. Made sure there would be enough evidence for a positive ID, but not so much that a close examination would reveal the deception. And then you pushed the car into the water." "I did." David's voice was haunted. "I killed a car full of evidence and watched it sink. Then I took Emma to a safe house we had prepared. She's been in hiding ever since." "Where?" "Can't tell you that." "Not yet. The trial just ended. Holloway and Chen are in prison, but they still have associates on the outside. People who might want revenge. People who might hurt you to hurt Emma. She needs to stay hidden a little longer. How much longer? Weeks maybe? Few months at most? The FBI is working on establishing a permanent safe identity for her. Witness protection. Once that's in place, once we're absolutely certain there's no threat, she'll come back. Come back as who? She can't be Emma Chen anymore. The girl is legally dead. No, she can't. David's voice was sad. She'll have a new name, a new identity, a new life, but she'll be alive. And she'll have her mother back. That's what matters. Sarah stood up on shaking legs, looking at the headstone again with new understanding. This wasn't Emma's grave. It was a memorial to a stranger, a Jane Doe who had died alone and unwanted, but whose death had saved a teenage girl's life. Does the FBI know about Emma being alive? They do now. She's been working with them as a confidential witness for the past 6 months, providing testimony, helping them build cases against Holloway's other associates. There's a whole network of corruption Emma uncovered that goes beyond Westbridge. She's helping bring down all of it. My daughter is alive. Sarah said it out loud, testing the words, seeing if they sounded real. Emma is alive, yes, and she's safe, and she wants to see you. Soon, tell her I love her. Tell her I understand why she had to let me believe she was dead, and tell her I'm not angry. Tell her yourself, David said gently, in person, in a few weeks, I promise. After the call ended, Sarah sat in the cemetery for hours, processing the revelation. Every emotion she had experienced over the past 17 months had been based on a lie. The grief, the guilt, the desperate investigation, the triumphant justice, all of it built on the false foundation of Emma's death. But it had been necessary. Sarah understood that now. If she had known Emma was alive, she never would have been able to hide it. Her relief would have shown on her face. Her behavior would have changed. And Holloway's people would have noticed. The grief had to be real for the deception to work. Sarah left the cemetery as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the graves. She drove home slowly, her mind already planning for what came next. If Emma was going to come back, even under a new identity, Sarah needed to be ready. She needed to be safe. Needed to make sure no one associated with Holloway could hurt her or use her to get to Emma. Over the next few weeks, Sarah took precautions. She sold the house in Westbridge and moved to a smaller apartment in Capital City, choosing a secure building with a doorman and cameras. She changed her phone number, her email, closed old social media accounts, and created new ones under a slightly altered name. She became harder to find, harder to track. She also stayed in touch with Jennifer Marks, who had become not just a journalist who had told Emma's story, but a genuine friend. Jennifer understood the complexities of the situation, the necessary deceptions, the ongoing danger. 1 month after the trial ended, Sarah received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a burner phone with a note in Emma's handwriting. Keep this charged. When it rings, answer immediately. It means it's time. Sarah kept the phone with her constantly, checking it obsessively to ensure the battery stayed full. Days passed, and weeks. The phone never rang, and Sarah began to wonder if it ever would. Until one Thursday afternoon, while she was grocery shopping, the phone buzzed in her purse. She abandoned her cart in the middle of the produce section and answered with trembling hands. Mom, Emma's voice, clear and real and unmistakably alive. It's time. Are you ready to see me? Where? There's a coffee shop in Riverside called Moonbeans. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. We'll have 30 minutes together, then I have to leave again. But I needed to see you. Face to face. I'll be there. Sarah barely slept that night. She kept checking the clock, willing time to move faster, desperate for tomorrow to arrive. When morning finally came, she showered and dressed with meticulous care, choosing clothes Emma would recognize, wanting to look like the mother her daughter remembered. She arrived at Moonbeans an hour early, too anxious to wait at home. She ordered coffee she couldn't drink and tried to read a book where the words blurred meaninglessly on the page. Her eyes kept darting to the door, watching every person who entered. At exactly 2 p.m., the door opened and a young woman walked in. Sarah's heart stopped. Emma, but not Emma. The girl who entered had short dark hair instead of Emma's long brown waves. She wore glasses Emma had never needed. Her clothes were different, more mature, professional, but the eyes. Those were Emma's eyes. Didn't the smile, tentative and nervous and full of love, was pure Emma. Sarah stood up so fast she knocked over her coffee cup. She didn't care. She crossed the coffee shop in 3 strides and pulled her daughter into her arms. They stood there, holding each other, both crying, while other customers politely pretended not to notice.
Oh.
Felt her daughter's heart beat against her chest, confirmed with every sense that this was real. Emma was alive. When they finally sat down, Sarah couldn't stop staring, couldn't stop touching Emma's hand to make sure she wasn't going to disappear. "I can't believe you're here. Can't believe you're real." Emma smiled through her tears. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry for what I put you through. But it was the only way." "I know," David explained. "I understand. But Emma, when can you come home? When can we be a real family again?" Emma's expression grew troubled. "I can't ever really come home. Westbridge isn't safe for me. Even with Holloway in prison, he has people loyal to him. People who might want revenge. The FBI is setting up a new identity for me. New name, new background, new life. I'll be able to visit you, but I can never be Emma Chen again. So what's your new name? Emily Carter?" Emma's smile was bittersweet. It's close enough that I'll answer to it naturally, but different enough that no one will make the connection. Emily Carter. Sarah tested the name. "What will you do? Where will you live?" "Capital City, actually. I'm enrolled in college there under my new identity. Journalism major. I'm going to finish what I started, Mom. I'm going to be an investigative journalist. I'm going to expose corruption and fight for truth." "Of course you are." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face again. "You're still my Emma, no matter what name you use." They talked for the full 30 minutes, cramming 17 months of separation into half an hour of conversation. Emma explained more about her life in hiding, the FBI safe houses, the fear and isolation. Sarah talked about the investigation, the trial, the satisfaction of seeing justice done. Too soon, Emma glanced at her watch. "I have to go. My handler is waiting outside. They're very strict about security. Soon." "When will I see you again? Maybe next week?" "We're working on a routine where I can visit regularly without drawing attention. Sarah Chen's grieving mother meeting with a college student named Emily Carter for coffee. No one will think twice about it." They hugged one more time. Sarah held on as long as she dared, memorizing every detail of this moment. "I love you, baby girl." "I love you too, Mom. Thank you for never giving up on me." Then Emma was gone, walking out of the coffee shop and into a waiting sedan with tinted windows. Sarah sat alone for a long time afterward, processing the bittersweet joy of reunion mixed with the grief of another goodbye. Her daughter was alive, but lost to her in a different way. Emma Chen was dead and buried. Emily Carter was a stranger who happened to share her daughter's soul, but it was something. It was more than Sarah had thought possible just hours ago. Over the following months, Sarah and Emma settled into a new normal. They met for coffee every week, sometimes twice a week. To anyone watching, they were just 2 women who had become friends, sharing conversation and laughter in coffee shops and parks. Only they knew the truth. Sarah learned about Emily Carter's life. She was excelling in her journalism classes, already working on investigative pieces for the college newspaper. She had made friends, joined clubs, created a life for herself, and 6 months after their first reunion, Emma introduced Sarah to someone special. "Mom, this is David Park, but you already knew that." Sarah looked at the young man standing beside her daughter. David had filled out since she last saw him, no longer the scared teenager but a confident young adult. He held Emma's hand with obvious affection. "We're together," Emma said, her voice both shy and proud. "We've been together since before everything happened. He saved my life, multiple times. I couldn't imagine being with anyone else." Sarah hugged David, this boy who had risked everything for her daughter. "Thank you for keeping her safe, for loving her." David smiled. "She makes it easy." 8 months after that, Sarah attended a small, private wedding. Emma and David got married in a garden ceremony with only a handful of guests. All FBI agents who had protected Emma during her time in hiding. Emma wore a simple white dress, her short hair styled elegantly, She looked radiant and happy and alive. Sarah walked her daughter down the aisle, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. This wasn't the wedding she had imagined when Emma was a little girl. This wasn't the big celebration with extended family and high school friends. This was smaller, quieter, built on secrets and new identities. But it was real. Emma was alive and in love and getting married. That was all that mattered. During the ceremony, Emma read vows she had written herself, her voice clear and steady. David, you saved my life in more ways than one. You kept my secret when the weight of it must have been unbearable. You stood by me when I was hiding in the shadows. You loved me when I couldn't even use my real name. I promised to spend the rest of my life being worthy of your courage and your heart. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. At the reception, Sarah pulled Emma aside for a private moment. Are you happy? Really happy. Emma nodded. I am, Mom. I know this isn't the life I planned. I know I can never be Emma Chen again. But I'm alive. I'm with someone I love. I'm doing work that matters. That's more than I ever thought I'd have after that night in the car. Do you ever regret it? The investigation, I mean, knowing what it cost you? Emma was quiet for a long moment, considering the question seriously. No, she finally said. What Holloway and the others were doing was wrong. They were stealing from people who trusted them, taking money that should have helped the community and using it for their own greed. If I hadn't exposed them, they would still be doing it, still hurting people. My investigation stopped that. It brought them to justice. That's worth what it cost. Even your name, your identity. Even that, Emma smiled. Besides, I'm still me. I'm still the person you raised, the values you taught me. My name doesn't change that. Emily Carter is just the public version of Emma Chen. In here, she said, touching her heart, I'm still your daughter. Sarah hugged her tightly. You're the bravest person I know. I learned from the best. 3 years after Emma's supposed death, Sarah received a final phone call on the burner phone. It was Emma, but her voice sounded different. Lighter, free. Mom, I have news. Marcus Holloway died in prison last night. Heart attack. The FBI confirmed it. And with his death, the last real threat to my safety is gone. They're considering releasing me from witness protection. Sarah's breath caught. You can use your real name, not publicly. Emma Chen is still legally dead and has to stay that way. But around you, around people I trust, I can stop pretending, can be myself again. When? Soon we're working out the details. But Mom, I wanted you to be the first to know. After everything you sacrificed, everything you endured, you deserve to have your daughter back. The call ended and Sarah allowed herself to cry. Not tears of grief this time, but tears of relief. Of joy. Of a nightmare finally ending. 6 months later, Emma and David moved to an apartment 20 minutes from Sarah's place in Capital City. Emma took a job as an investigative journalist at the Tribune, working under Jennifer Mark's mentorship. David became a civil rights attorney, fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. They couldn't erase the years they had lost. Couldn't undo the trauma of those 17 months when Sarah had believed her daughter was dead. But they could build something new. They had family dinners every Sunday. Sarah taught Emma to cook the recipes her own mother had taught her, passing down family traditions to a new generation.
Ow.
They celebrated holidays together, creating new memories to replace the painful ones. And one spring morning, Emma called Sarah with the most wonderful news. Mom, I'm pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother. Sarah cried happy tears, thinking about the miracle of it all. A daughter she thought she had lost returned to her, a grandbaby on the way. A future full of possibilities instead of the dead end of grief. That evening, Sarah visited Riverside Cemetery for the first time in months. She brought flowers to the grave of the Jane Doe who had taken Emma's place, the unknown woman whose death had saved her daughter's life. The headstone had been changed. Sarah had arranged for a new inscription, in memory of an unknown soul who gave the ultimate gift. Rest in peace. Sarah knelt beside the grave and spoke softly to the woman she had never known. Thank you. Thank you for what your death allowed. I hope wherever you are, you know that you're remembered, that you matter, that your life and your death had meaning. She placed the flowers on the headstone and stood to leave. As she walked back to her car, her phone rang. Emma's real number now, not the burner phone, not the spoofed calls that had started this whole journey. Just her daughter, calling to chat about baby names and nursery colors and all the normal. Wonderful, mundane concerns of a young mother-to-be. Sarah answered with a smile. Hi, sweetheart. Tell me what you're thinking. And as they talked, Sarah thought about the journey they had been on. The mysterious phone calls that had shattered her world and rebuilt it. The investigation that had uncovered horrible truths. The justice that had come, swift and final. The revelation that had transformed grief into joy. Her daughter was alive. Against all odds, despite all the danger, Emma had survived. She had a new name and a new life, but she was still Emma in all the ways that mattered. The nightmare was over. The healing had begun. And the future, once dark and hopeless, now shone with possibility. Sarah drove home through the spring evening, listening to Emma's excited voice, and felt genuine peace for the first time in years. Her daughter was alive. That was everything. Sarah Chen stood in the kitchen of her new house, a charming colonial in a quiet capital city suburb, watching her granddaughter play in the backyard. Little Sarah Emma Carter, 4 years old, ran through the grass chasing butterflies, her laughter floating through the open window. Emma, still going by Emily Carter publicly, but Sarah to her family, was pregnant with her second child. She sat at the kitchen table with David, reviewing notes for her latest investigation. She'd become one of the Tribune's most respected investigative reporters. With 3 major corruption exposes to her credit and a wall full of journalism awards. Mom, can you watch Sadie while we run to the office? Emma asked. Jennifer wants to go over the story before it runs tomorrow. Of course, Sarah smiled at her daughter, still marveling at moments like this. Normal family moments. Mundane requests. The beautiful ordinariness of life after extraordinary trauma. After Emma and David left, Sarah settled onto the back porch with a cup of tea, watching her granddaughter play. Sadie had Emma's curiosity, that same relentless need to understand how things worked. At 4 years old, she was already asking profound questions about fairness and justice and why people did bad things. She would be a force to be reckoned with when she grew up, Sarah thought, with a mixture of pride and concern. Another generation of women in their family who wouldn't stay quiet when they saw injustice. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Marks. Did you see the news? Marcus Holloway's attorney filed an appeal, still trying to get his conviction overturned. Some people never learn. Sarah wasn't worried. The evidence against Holloway was ironclad. Emma's investigation had been too thorough, the documentation too complete. The appeal would fail like all the others had failed. Justice had been done, and it would stay done. That evening, after Emma and David returned and collected a sleepy Sadie for bedtime, Sarah sat alone in her living room looking at the photographs on the walls. Pictures of Emma's wedding, Sadie's birth, family holidays, birthday celebrations. All the moments they had built together after believing they would never have moments like this again. There was also one photograph that visitors to the house found puzzling. A photo of a grave. A simple headstone for an unknown woman. Sarah kept it prominently displayed, much to the confusion of friends who didn't know the story. But Sarah would never forget, would never stop honoring the Jane Doe whose death had saved her daughter's life. Every year on the anniversary of Emma's supposed death, Sarah visited that grave with flowers and gratitude. Her phone rang. Emma. Mom, Sadie wants to say goodnight to Grandma. Sarah's heart swelled as her granddaughter's sleepy voice came through the phone. Night-night, Grandma. Love you. Love you too, sweet girl. Dream good dreams. After the call ended, Sarah sat in the quiet house and reflected on the journey that had brought her here. It had started with a phone call at 3:47 in the morning, an impossible call from a dead daughter's number. A call that had shattered reality and rebuilt it into something both terrible and wonderful. She had learned so much in those dark months, about corruption and conspiracy, about the courage it took to pursue truth even when it was dangerous, about the resilience of the human spirit, about the lengths a mother would go to protect her child. But most importantly, she had learned about hope, that even in the darkest moments, when all seemed lost, there could be light on the other side, that endings could become beginnings, that death could transform into life. Emma was alive. That single fact remained the most miraculous part of Sarah's world. Her daughter had been dead, and now was alive again, lost and now found. It wasn't the life either of them had planned. Emma would never attend Westbridge High's class reunions, would never be able to use her real name publicly, Would always have to maintain the fiction of Emily Carter for the outside world. But she was alive. She was happy. She had a family and a career and a future. That was everything. Sarah turned off the lights and went to bed, thinking about tomorrow. Emma was coming by for lunch. They would talk about the new investigation Emma was working on, about Sadie's preschool adventures, about baby names for the new little one on the way. Normal, mundane, beautiful topics. The conversations of a mother and daughter who had been given a second chance. Sarah's last thought before sleep claimed her was a simple prayer of gratitude. Not to any specific deity, just to the universe that had given her back her daughter. Thank you. Thank you for the mysterious phone calls that started everything. Thank you for the courage to investigate. Thank you for the justice that came. Thank you for the second chance. Thank you for letting me keep my daughter. And in the darkness of her bedroom, Sarah Chen smiled, knowing that tomorrow she would wake up to another day of her daughter being alive. It was the greatest gift she had ever received,